Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to the fifth part of the seven deadly sins. In this part, we're going to discuss about the sin of consuming the property of orphans.
وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَكُمْ بَيْنَكُمْ بِالْبَاطِلِ. And do not consume the property of the orphans by way of falsehood or forcefully. Usurpation refers to usurping others' possession by force. It is unlawful to take a property of another Muslim without his or her consent. Unlawful property should be returned in the same condition. And if you have damaged that, then the equivalent should be paid. You cannot take somebody's property without their consent. And if you have and you've damaged it, you have to return the equivalent. Whoever extorts even a span of land of somebody, his neck will be encircled with it down the seven earths. So if you take anything which is rightfully not yours, you will be punished with it. And that thing that you have, the very thing you have taken, it will be encircled around you and you will be sinking in the earth. Sin of usurpation is whoever has oppressed another person concerning his reputation or anything else, he should beg him to forgive him before the day of resurrection, when there will be no compensation. And if you have good deeds, those good deeds will be taken from you and given to the person you've oppressed. And if you have no good deeds, then the bad deeds of that person will be loaded upon to your account. You ruling of usurpation. This is a hadith we've just seen. The Prophet ﷺ said, I'm only human. If one of you comes and out of the eloquence of your speech, you have made me give a wrong judgment, then be aware that the judgment I have given, and if I've given you a right of your brother. So if two people are arguing about a piece of land, and one is more eloquent than the other in explaining his case, and the Prophet, he said, I'm human. If I have made a false judgment, if I've given you a judgment that is an error, and I've given you that piece of land, know that I am giving you a piece of fire. So anything that, it doesn't have to be land, but anything, any verdict in your favor. If the Prophet has given, or any judge, you go to any judge and you were able to talk your way out of it, and you tricked the judge in believing you were right, and you got the verdict in your favor, and you got whatever you got in your favor, it is a piece of fire that you've been given, because you've tricked the judge and you've deprived your Muslim brother or sister of their right. The responsibility of the property of orphans, we have an ayah here which we will go through. And do not entrust those who are weak of judgment the possessions which God has placed in your charge. So those who are weak, we're talking about orphans who are not capable, or not at the age, or mentally they are not capable of taking care of their wealth. So a caretaker, a guarantor has been placed as one who will take care of it. But let them have the sustenance therefrom. So if you can pay the orphans from their own wealth, you can pay for them, and you can provide for them from their wealth, and you can even clothe them, but you should speak to them kindly. And test the orphans until when they reach the age of marriage. So when they reach the age of marriage, you test them to see if they are mentally now capable of receiving their estate, their possession. So you are taking care of it while they grow up, while they become at the age, or at a mentally at a state where they can mental state of discretion. They can decide what is good for them and what is bad for them. So they have reached an age of marriage that they can perceive what is good and what is bad. So they have now sound judgment. And if they reach that age, then deliver to them their wealth. And do not eat it extravagantly or hastily. So do not be quick into consuming it, thinking that they will grow up and take their wealth. So let's waste it. Okay. And whoever so is rich, he or she should refrain from taking anything from it. And whoever is poor, let him take from it a fair manner. Then when you deliver to them the wealth, take a witness, and Allah's Father is sufficient as a reckoner. So the manager of the property of orphans should manage and administer the property, and he should benefit the orphans' property by increasing it. So you can trade on their behalf in order to help them, okay, in order to increase it for them. Indeed, those who consume the wealth of the orphans wrongfully only they consume in their bellies fire, and they will be burnt in a blazing fire. So if you consume their wealth wrongfully, so if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you to increase their wealth and you start to put it in business, but really you are trying to benefit from that because you know that this business will benefit you, okay, then this is wrong. But if you are doing it for them, the intention is to do it for them, then this is okay. Okay, if you're consuming it because you as we said in the previous ayah, if you're consuming their wealth in haste because you worry that they will grow up and take it all, so you want to take as much as you can before they grow up, then you are consuming the fire. And let fear those who executor or guardians, those who are in charge of the property, if they have, let them consider this. Allah subhanahu says, let them fear this. If they had left any offspring that is weak behind, so fear Allah and let them speak words of appropriate. So Allah subhanahu is telling them when they're dealing with orphans, they should think of their own children. Would they like after them that their children, if they leave their own offspring behind, and when they die, if they leave behind their offspring, would they really like somebody to take advantage of them or mistreat them? So Allah subhanahu is asking you, just as you would not like your offspring to be mistreated, say do not mistreat the orphans or what you are guardians of, okay, or responsible of. The companions and the orphans, when the companions, so many of the companions had an orphan that they used to look after. But when this ayah came, those who eat the property of all orphans unjustly, and they will have a fire, they will be consuming fire in their bellies. Everyone who had an orphan, he started to separate his food from the food of orphan from his food, their drink from his drink, and they began to detain the remaining food which the orphan himself ate or spoiled. So the orphans were not able to consume all of the food. So a lot of it was being wasted and remained. So they would keep it and they didn't know what to do with it. So it became too difficult for them, and they mentioned this case to the Prophet ﷺ. Then an ayah was revealed saying, they ask you concerning the orphans, say the best thing to do is what is for their good. If you mix the affairs with yours, they are your breathing. So Allah subhanahu is saying you can mix your affairs. So you didn't have to go to the extreme of what the companions were doing. You didn't have to go to that far. But because they were so worried about the ayah, they took it in such a literal sense, and it became too difficult with dealing with them. So they even started separating their food and drink to the extent of this ayah. So the ayah is talking about property, but they even took, because of the ayah, that they didn't want to unjustly consume their property, they wouldn't even take their food even if it was left. So a lot of food was being wasted. And then they started, so after this ayah, then the companions began mixing the food and drink with the orphans. The permission regarding the property of orphans. So a grandfather, so Umar al-Shahib said on his father's authority, that his grandfather told him, a man came to the Prophet and he said, I have an orphan with me, but I am too poor. And the Prophet ﷺ said, you can use the property, you can use something from the property, okay? You can take it without spending lavishly, okay? You can take a fee from it, okay? So if you are looking after an orphan and you are a poor person, then you can take something from it. And some of the ayahs regarding the property of orphans, as we've said, you do not eat extravagantly or hastily, do not consume their wealth with yours, and obviously we know that the companions took it very literally, but again, you can mix your affairs with them. You don't have to take it to the extent of separating food and drink. Indeed, those who consume wealth of orphans wrongfully, only they consume the fire in their bellies, which we've already talked about. And also, if taking the fees, if you are rich, you should not take anything from them, from their wealth, if you are rich. So for this one, before we go on to talking about the yatim, this hadith refers to the poor person. If you are rich, the ayah does say you should not be taking, a rich should not take anything from it. Okay. So virtues regarding orphans, فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدُقُّ الْيَتِيمَ, and then they who drive or are harsh to the yatim, they push them away. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this remaining of ayah, woe to them for their prayers then, for the way they act and behave. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's messenger said, I and the person who sponsors or looks after an orphan will be like this with me on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And he held out his middle and index finger together. It was narrated from Abu Hurairah that the Prophet ﷺ said, Oh Allah, bear witness that I have issued a warning concerning the failure to fulfill the rights of the two weak ones, orphans and women. Now, it's not to say the women are weak, because a lot of people say women are not weak. It means that they are vulnerable. There's another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, be careful about your treatment of women, for they are prisoners within your own home. So be careful of how you treat them. There is an ayah about the orphan girl who lives with her guardian and shares his property, her wealth. And this is a lengthy hadith that I have not gone into, but you can read the full hadith. Here's the reference. There were people who had orphans, and what happened was they wanted to marry them because of their property or of their beauty, but they would not give them the meher, the right meher or the adequate meher. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals an ayah saying that if you cannot be just with them, do not marry them and marry other women. If you cannot be just with them by giving them the meher that they deserve, because there were other suitors who were willing to give them the meher. So what they would do, they would want to marry them without giving them the meher, just so they can acquire their property. And this hadith, the ayah referred to, this hadith is a warning for those people who do that. Okay, and this is why it says, unless you can treat them justly and give them the suitable meher, do not marry them if you cannot do that.
And please don't forget to like, subscribe and share this video. You can access all our courses from our website. Please check the description box in this video. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.